amazing guest here today. Say hi to Jenna Teague. Woohoo!
Hi guys.
Is that how you pronounce your name, Teague?
Yes.
Like Cheryl Teague's?
Yeah.
Exactly. All right, welcome. We're so pumped to be here today. We are at Food Mood Attitude, where we bring you all things eating psychology, coaching, mindful living, food and mood, and so much more. We have two people on already, so come and say hello. We have an amazing guest today. And let me...
it's my first live stream, guys. So.
Oh, this is your first live stream. Well, welcome. So let me take a minute to just introduce Jenna to everybody. I'm so excited to have her because she is like super aligned with the kind of work that I do, and she's taking it in this whole other direction, which is so amazing. So at her core, Jenna Teague is a healer. In fact, you're a psychologist by training, right?
I'm a psychotherapist.
Psychotherapist, yeah.
Yes.
So from over a decade supporting clients healing in her psychotherapy practice to sparking business healing for coaches and entrepreneurs, Jenna co-creates with her clients game-changing shifts in their lives and businesses. She knows deep down in her bones that presence always trumps perfection. And building community is what lights her up the most. If you want to see Jenna at her giddiest and geekiest, invite her to your next creative brainstorming session. She lives for that. And if you want to see her in her happy place, you only need three things: the ocean, music, and the people she loves the most. Bonus points for bringing along Riley and Raider. Raider?
Yes.
Yeah, Raider, her beloved pups. And Jenna and I were actually on a call a few weeks ago, and I saw those pups in the background. Remember, they were like,
they're here.
So
hopefully they'll sleep during the rest of our call.
Oh, good. They're taking a nap.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So Jenna, I'm dying to hear all about you. So you started with the psychotherapy practice. So tell us a little bit more about that first.
Yeah. So it actually was a little bit of a winding road to get to the psychotherapy. I started out as an interpreter, actually.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I studied foreign languages in college and just I was drawn to people, like meeting people from many different backgrounds and cultures and getting to know them through their language. And that sort of led me to the realization that what I was really passionate about more than language was people. And that's how I found my way to psychotherapy and how I eventually found my way into health coaching after that. I'm really passionate about finding holistic ways of working with people to help them make positive changes in their lives. And I've done that in a variety of ways throughout my career.
That is so fascinating. I personally love languages and linguistics, and I'm like a total, like word game geek. I love Boggle and Scrabble and but I've always had trouble learning languages for some reason. I took Spanish and I took Hebrew and I can't think in the language. So for me, hearing that you're an interpreter, that's so hard for me. So what languages did you interpret, or what were your main languages?
So my two main ones are French and Spanish. And then I also speak a little bit of Italian.
Molto bene, grazie.
Yes. Molto bene.
Molto bene. My dad loves to pretend he can speak languages, and he always learns different languages and then gives it up, but he'll learn these catchphrases and teach it to us.
I love it. People probably are like, "Oh my gosh, you're fluent in so many languages." No, just a few words in every language.
Yeah, exactly. I even learned how to say 1 to 5 in Turkish when I was in Turkey, and I was like, "All right, I know Turkish."
Yes.
So, okay, so tell me a little bit more about what the modality of treatment you would use in your psychotherapeutic practice.
Yeah. So what I enjoy the most in terms of psychotherapy is something called cognitive behavioral therapy. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you've heard of it before.
Yeah, I have.
But yeah, it's a really great way of changing thought patterns and behaviors. Mm-hmm. And it works really well for a lot of different kinds of struggles that many of us have, like depression, anxiety. It's also really great in the treatment of OCD. So yeah, that's my method of choice.
Yeah, that's your
I find
wheelhouse.
that yeah, it's got enough sort of practicality to it
Hmm.
that I find people can connect with it really well. It's not this sort of like lay on the couch, Freudian kind of thing.
Right,
So
that analysis and the edible stuff and the
yeah, no,
yeah,
it's not. It's much more what's happening now,
yeah.
and what's contributing to the patterns that aren't working for you.
And do you do any mindfulness training as well?
Yeah, I do. I mean, I've studied mindfulness mostly for myself because I find it so helpful.
Hmm.
But I would say that it influences my work with clients as well.
That's
I
great.
mean, how can it not? It's such a powerful tool,
It
you
really
know?
is. I use it a lot in my with my clients as well, and it like I use it with everything from mindful grieving to using it as a way to feel embodied when people are having
Yes.
some body image concerns and challenges. There's so many. I even have people do mindful driving, which is pretty interesting, right?
Ooh,
And it helps
that is
prevent
very cool.
yeah, it helps prevent like the road rage because you're just
Yeah.
like you're being completely present in your body. You're noticing when you're feeling that stress bubble rise. You're noticing instead of like checking your phone at every red light, you're like, oh, there's a tree here, and oh wow, like I didn't notice this and I didn't notice that, and I have found that it's been really helpful for people.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to try that.
Yeah,
I I think the most powerful moment I had in mindfulness training and also just with my own mindfulness practice is with mindful eating.
yeah.
And some of those mindful eating exercises are really powerful. Like eat a strawberry, but be present while you're eating it.
Hmm.
It's so interesting to notice how big the gap is sometimes between the actual experience and how we're how the lack of presence that we have.
Yeah.
Our mind is somewhere else, but our body's there and we're not connecting with it.
Yeah, there's a huge dissociation. Like there's
Yeah.
it's in a dissociative place. So I took a certificate program in mindful eating, and I use it a lot with my clients. And I do like the raisin exercise and I do stuff
Yes.
with chocolate. And it's really, I could talk about it for hours, but just the ability to bring awareness and pleasure into the eating experience is such a powerful way to like really understand your body's needs, like what it likes, what it doesn't like, versus the stories in our head about what are our trigger foods, or the foods
Yes.
that are good for us and bad for us. But we're instead tuning in to this place where, like, you know what, I don't really like this and I don't need to eat this, or like,
Yeah.
wow, oh my gosh, I've never noticed the intensity of these flavors and textures and mouthfeel before. And I have people being like, oh my God, I've never even really tasted this food before. And this is the
Yeah.
first time that I feel like I'm really eating. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I think that's so interesting, that idea of getting out of our mindset and out of our head when it comes to food and more in our body and in our internal knowing and our intuition about what's good for us. Because we get so many messages externally about, like, literally that whole series of books, eat this, not that.
Oh, yeah.
We have so many messages around this is good, that's bad,
Yeah.
this is what you should be eating at this time. And I think that cognitive experience really cuts us off from the physical experience of knowing, like, what is our body actually craving? What does it want? How does it experience different foods? Um,
Totally.
yeah.
Totally. And, it's like, I was somebody always who like ate standing up. I ate really fast. I was always distracted. And so for when I started to do mindful eating, I was like, oh my gosh, this is like a game changer. Like I'm not beholden to these foods. They don't have control over me because I have such a presence to it now that I'm the one in charge. I can decide how much of this to eat because I'm full and I don't need to eat anymore because I've gotten the unctuousness of the richness or the flavor that I really wasn't experiencing before. Do you know what I mean? And so I would keep
Yeah.
eating to like chase the flavor. Like, where is it? Where is it?
Yes.
Because I wasn't even aware of the experience. So it's a total game changer, I think, too.
Yeah, and how much your satiety and like satisfaction and fullness improves, and how much your digestion improves. Like, that's what I
Oh,
notice
yeah.
for me. If I am distracted and just sort of mindlessly eating, I I have, indigestion or like a lack of satisfaction after my meals. Whereas if I make it more of a conscious practice, I'm so much more satisfied.
Yeah, totally with you on that. I knew we were so aligned. So how did you parlay what you were doing into a coaching practice? I know you said you love healing and you love helping people. And coaching and therapy are, very intertwined, but they're two very different types of helping. So how did you parlay your experience in your practice into what you're doing now?
Yeah. So I think one of the things that I noticed about psychotherapy, at least my practice of it, was that as psychotherapists, I don't think we talk a lot about food. We might talk about exercise in terms of stress reduction and certain lifestyle factors, but we're not talking a lot about food and nutrition unless we're specifically focused on that, as like with people who might have eating disorders or, maladaptive eating patterns. But for the most part, we're kind of ignoring that whole piece of the pie. And as I continue to work with clients, I thought, I don't want to ignore that. I want to incorporate that into the kind of work that I do in a holistic way and have a much more sort of broad picture of everything that's going on with a person, not just their thoughts, not just their emotions, but what's going on with their body. How are they moving? How are they eating? How are their relationships? How's their career? And so that's what led me ultimately to pursue training to be a health coach, because I wanted to bring that perspective into my psychotherapy work. And I also wanted to do that work in and of itself. So it kind of blended for me. Like I was able to bring it over to psychotherapy, but then I was also able to kind of bring a little psychotherapy into the coaching. So it's been such an incredible personal revelation for me, just going through that course of study.
So how so? Tell us how it's been a revelation for you personally.
Yeah. Well, I think one of the biggest factors for me was the community around the training program.
Which training program did you do?
I went to IIN, the Institute for Integrative Nutrition.
Yeah.
So pretty big program. There were a lot of people in my graduating class. And I had never been connected with a community so passionate and so large as that group, and also so dedicated to a common purpose of like helping people improve their lives in a really holistic and sustainable way. So that was mind-blowing for me to just instantly have this family of people who shared my interests and shared my passion in terms of the work they wanted to do in the world. Which I think is why I'm so passionate about building community now, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, I've met a ton of people who've graduated from that program, and I always hear the same thing, that there's such great community and people create masterminds together after.
Yes.
But what I also like about the IIN program is that there's so many directions for you to go, right? So our mutual friend Holly, is very focused on gut health and immunity and that kind of thing, and you went a whole different direction. So there's so many aspects of holistic health that you can approach, and I kind of love that you can niche it down to like one area if you want. That's like you're truly passionate about. Like I want to help people with this,
Yes.
So if there was one thing that you feel like I want to help people do this thing, have you been able to narrow that down? Is there like one thing that you've like, you know what, this really speaks to me. This is what I feel like I really want to help people with.
Yes.
What is that?
I would say across all areas of the work that I do, it really boils down to self-love and worthiness. I feel like that's at the core of so many struggles that we have, is our sense of worth or lack of worth, and our willingness to or even ability to take good care of ourselves when we feel unworthy. I mean, those things don't go together.
Yeah.
Why are you going to invest your time and resources in yourself when you don't feel worthy to begin with?
That's such a problem because it's also very connected to feelings of shame, right? So shame is connected to unworthiness. And if you have those two feelings or sort of undercurrent, it's very hard to then make choices that are you're going to probably make choices that confirm that rather than,
yes,
you know what I mean? So
absolutely.
I love that. So what are some of the ways that you help people, like, with that in particular, the self-love? And I know, and we'll talk about the whole perfection piece, which is an offshoot of that as well, in a minute. But tell me a little bit about what a typical client session would be like with you.
Ooh, that's a good question. Oh, they're so different. I think one of the commonalities of the people that I work with and the kinds of work that I do is identifying core beliefs.
Okay.
And the role that they're playing in our choices, because it's so often that we have these core beliefs or stories that we tell ourselves, narratives that are constantly operating in the background and have been for so long that they're entirely outside of our conscious awareness. Mm-hmm. Yet they're having such an incredibly huge impact on how we're living our day-to-day lives. So it's this really terrible mismatch of, I'm not even aware of this thing, but this thing is controlling and influencing so many of my choices. So I think what I really like helping people identify is, what are those stories? Where are they coming from? Mm-hmm. And do we actually have any evidence that they're true? Like, what's the evidence for that?
I love that. I find myself asking that all the time. Like, is this a story that you have just projected onto other people, or is there actually something here? Like, it could be either way, you know?
Yeah, and that's the piece. Like, let's try to examine the evidence for and against. And I think that's a place where my love for cognitive behavioral therapy comes in, because that's the kind of thing you would do in that approach. But like, really boil it down and see. And I think one of the other things that is really important is that these stories and these beliefs, we think that they only influence information after we take it in. So we will take in an experience, and then the story will come in and sort of like mess with it and shape it to fit whatever we believe is true about ourselves or the world. But the reality is that the stories shape the way that we perceive the information. So even like, we think that we're like a video camera, just like recording what's happening in the world as it happens. But the reality is, we've got so many lenses of beliefs and stories on that video camera that the information's not even coming in an accurate way. So I think that's why it's so important to bring light to the stories and bring light to the beliefs, so that we can see that not only are they impacting our thoughts, but they're impacting the way we experience the world and experience ourselves in the world.
That is amazing. I'm so into that. I could talk about this for hours, like peeling the onion, right? And
now you've got me geeking out. So.
I could geek out with you anytime, girl. This kind of stuff, like the psychology stuff and the deeper stuff. Did you read The Gift of Your Compulsions by Mary O'Malley?
No.
Oh, it's a great book. And it talks about how we should not befriend our compulsions, but be curious about them and actually make it part of the fabric of who we are, and accept that is, our compulsions are part of us. And so rather than pushing them down to the basement, why not bring them up, be curious about it, welcome them in, understand them, so that energy can come up and out versus constantly be squelched down.
Yes.
I don't know why that reminded me of that. The other book that I love is Loving What Is. Do you know that?
Yes, I do.
I love her too. And I like some of what you're saying is sort of reminds me of that sort of thinking, where it's like the way we perceive things and the stories that we create and the filters that we put into it, before the final product. And then we behave in a way that is confirmation bias, right? Like, this is what we believe, so we're going to move about the world as if that is true. And that can be detrimental to us, right?
Yeah, we are, as human beings, biased toward confirming our existing beliefs.
Right.
So we're going to scan the environment, scan the world for information that says, like, if we believe, like, I just have the worst luck. Nothing good ever happens to me. I must have like a rain cloud over my head because I just have the worst, like, misfortune. Say that's our belief. Yeah. We're going to look for experiences that confirm that belief. And we're actually going to screen out experiences that go against that belief.
Wow.
Because it's so much easier to confirm an existing belief than it is to disconfirm one. Like, it takes so much more effort,
right,
awareness, and evidence, right, to refute a belief than to confirm it.
Wow. So, I mean, this is a whole nother topic, but think about that with respect to politics and how we shape our politics, right?
Exactly. Yes.
That is so interesting to me. And so, of course, it begs a question for me, like, you have created this whole other business now that I would love to hear more about, sort of relating to this idea of perfectionism and how I'm calling it like toxic perfectionism, because it ends up sort of infiltrating us in ways, like, we see perfection as this ideal and as this really great thing that we all need to achieve. But what ends up happening is it's very detrimental to our psyche and to our bodies, and it creates stress response. And so I would love to hear sort of how that subsect of your business came to be and a little bit more about it. I know you have a partner, so in that as well.
Yeah. Well, I would say part of the reason it's not an accident that this business came to be, and that I'm a part of it, because I identify as a longtime perfectionist myself. So this is something that I have personally lived. It's a path that I've walked. It's something that I've been working on, all my life. And I think as time has gone on and experiences that I've had, I've noticed that perfectionism isn't like limited to one area. It becomes a way of thinking that usually spreads out into many different parts of your life. And there's certain realities of the world we live in now, with social media and like online presence being so curated and so idealized, that I think perfectionism is really on the rise right now for so many of us, because we have this opportunity to create an entirely new identity in the online world, and to show just the parts of ourselves and our lives that we think are most desirable to others, or most enviable, or most perfect. And we also have the opportunity to consume the highlight reels of other people's lives, including like celebrities and, royals and, people who have these idealized lives. And so, through the community of IIN and my podcast, I connected with Ashley Looker, who's my partner in the business, which is called F Perfect.
Love it.
And we kind of had simpatico like you and I have. Like, we just sort of connected and we're like-minded. But one thing that we really connected on was this struggle with perfectionism. And one thing that I had noticed through a podcast that I had been doing about entrepreneurship is that the process of going through running your own business tends to activate a lot of these perfectionistic beliefs.
Oh, yeah.
Because you're putting yourself out there in this really huge way. You're responsible for your own success or failure in this really intense way that we're not when we're in employee, situations.
Totally.
So I was just seeing so many places that perfectionism was cropping up for people. And I just felt like, Ashley and I felt like this is something we really have to address. It's something that we're so closely connected to as individuals and in our own lives. And, we need to start talking about this and putting it out there and shining a light on it, because just like with the underlying beliefs that we don't always see, perfectionism can be one of those. Like, sometimes I'll have a conversation with someone and they'll say, oh, totally not a perfectionist. Like, that's not me. I'm like messy and I don't care and I can't be bothered. But then you sort of go through the sneaky ways that perfectionism can show up, like people pleasing, avoiding conflicts, holding your tongue, not wanting to share your opinion, being competitive around like your home or your possessions or, and then people will go, oh, procrastination is another big one. And so it's a sneaky thing that I think is outside of our awareness sometimes, except in these really specific areas. Like, I want to look like the woman on the magazine cover. I want my life to look like so-and-so's Instagram feed. It's so much more than that.
Yeah. I mean, you just said there's so much to unpack there because, I mean, you're going through this litany of different things in our lives, and I think almost everybody can resonate with that in different ways, and I love that this idea of like it's a sneaky way because I mean, I could say that like if I turn my computer this way, you're gonna see like a massive mess in my house, and it's like constant, like I can't keep it together. But I'm not posting that on Facebook, and I'm not and I love this. I don't love it, I hate it actually. Just you can scroll through your Facebook feed and you're not going to know the couples that are in trouble. You're not going to know the children that are having a hard time necessarily. You're not going to see the things that make us vulnerable and make us real and authentic because we're so afraid to show the side of us that isn't perfect. And I wonder, like, when you boil it down to its core, what prevents us from just being who we are? Like, what is it? Is it a fear of rejection? Is it a fear of being a pariah somehow in your society? What are your thoughts on that? Like, what actually prevents us from just being who we are?
I think that's a really good question. I do think part of it is a fear that we're not worthy as we are, that we have to achieve something or be something specific to earn our worth. So we're somehow insufficient as we are. I think the idea that you bring up about like being a pariah and like social acceptance is really important because part of our development as human beings, all of us, is to go through different stages. And one of our biggest identity formation stages occurs in adolescence. And what do we want as teenagers? Social approval. That's like the biggest thing. We want our friends to like us. We want to be part of the group. And, I don't think it's a coincidence that our identity forms so strongly then, and we still carry that need for social approval into our adult lives. So, I think we want validation of who we are, of our worth, that we're okay. And I do think we fear rejection.
Yeah, and also like you're talking about the teenage years, but it also can start way earlier, right? Like, why'd you get an A and not an A plus? And like, hey, why didn't you get the home run in the Little League game? And like, well-meaning parents, of course, we all just want our kids to be, successful and happy. But sometimes that success comes at a cost, right? And that is right. We sort of internalize those messages that what I am is not enough, just as you said, right? And I've got to be able to do X, Y, and Z in order to prove my worth. And then you end up sort of creating this cascade of problems where you're always having to prove your worth externally. Whether it's to your parents, to the Little League coach, to your teacher, to your employer. It's not good enough that you're a partner at this company. You have to like have this ridiculous work ethic and be working and having no work-life balance, and right? And it just goes on and on and on and on.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. I think we internalize contingencies, that our worth is contingent on something else. The home run, the partnership, the raise. I mean, the truth is our worth is not contingent on anything. We are inherently worthy. We were born worthy. As human beings, we are all worthy. But that it's hard to get to that place of knowing. Because we get so many messages about the contingencies of how we look or where we live or how much money we make or the car we drive or all of those things.
All of those things. I found like when I was in college, and even grad school, I had like really deep, like authentic relationships, tons of vulnerability. And then like when we all got married, it was like that all sort of shut down. And all of a sudden we had this like, I am married and I am happy and I have a perfect
family. And this
family.
is my perfect family.
Yeah. And like and we can't discuss problems. And I'd be like, what? Like that just puts up all these walls and it prevents connection and it prevents us from having a deeper relationship with which so many people need once they have families of their own, because it can't be so monolithic that you can't extend beyond that to be honest about how you feel about everything, you know?
Yeah, and I think that's a big part of why Ashley and I wanted to focus F Perfect solely on this like middle finger to perfection message, is to really be bold in the statement and be extra vulnerable to give people permission.
Yeah. That's awesome.
You know, to be imperfect, to talk about the problems, to post the selfie that, you know, isn't retouched or isn't perfectly, you know, centered or lit or whatever, you know, to really embrace authenticity and vulnerability and do it together. Because if you can have a community around you that's saying, yes, we all believe that imperfection is beautiful and that actually failing at being perfect is a success. Chasing perfection is you're doomed to fail. But embracing imperfection is success. So if you have a community around you that's amplifying that message, it gets a lot easier to try to walk that road.
I am so glad that you guys created this, because I think, you know, this is the work that I do too, like around body image and food. Like, why does food have to be so perfect? And, you know, it creates this whole fear of food if you're not eating clean and this food is good and this food is bad, and I'm good if I eat broccoli and I'm bad if I eat a cupcake, and all these things that leads to just fear. And when we actually want to just be curious, like, what is happening around us? What is, right? So I think the more people that can normalize this and understand like that we got to get a public forum out there, because the way the societal, you know, I guess, you know, ideal is so strong, and it's so, the fabric is laid so deep that it takes a long time to dismantle that, right? So I think the work that you're doing is so incredibly important, and I'm so glad that, you know, you're out there and that I can be, you know, a forum for you to like get that message out there. So tell us a little bit more about what you guys are doing. So I know you have a challenge. I know you're opening up a course. Tell me a little more about that.
So right now we are on the second day of our 7-day challenge. And we are the first day we talked about body. So very much in your lane, we talked about how perfectionism impacts our relationships with our body. Today we're talking about people pleasing and likability. We're going to be talking about food, and how perfectionism shows up there, how it shows up in our relationships with others, in our concept of success in our work, and then also in our deeper purpose. So we're kind of navigating that process right now.
That's great. So can people still join the challenge, or are you going to run it again? Or
Absolutely. People can join. You won't have missed anything. You can go on our Instagram and check out the first 2 days. But you can sign up at fperfect.com/challenge.
Okay.
And then you'll get a daily email for the next 5 days.
All right. That actually reminds me. I want to show everybody your beautiful website. So let me just switch screens here. Oh, there's my Facebook page. Okay. Look at this, guys. So this is the F Perfect site, and I love this. This is the Take the Pledge. Let me move this. Okay, middle finger to perfection challenge. So you can just go to fperfect.com. This is right there on the first page, and you know, opt into it. It sounds like a fantastic, like deep, really like, you know, encompassing a lot of the issues that we've talked about today, you know, not just about body and food, but I love the spirituality piece of it, and like with how happens with our work. And so as entrepreneurs, like, oh man, I've been struggling a lot with that. Like, you know, comparisonitis, and there's so many people in the same space as you that it's so hard to set yourself apart, and it's so hard to, you know, rummage through the muck and noise to hear your own, what is your own voice saying? What is calling to you without being influenced by so many other things, you know? Yeah. But I'm just going to continue to the site for a second just so people can get to see what else is on here. And your partner is Ashley Looker, is that right?
Yes, that's Ashley, yep.
Okay, so there she is.
She's actually an eating psychology coach as well.
Oh, Jenny. I didn't know that.
Yeah,
oh, very cool.
Yeah.
That's great. Okay, so we're on a mission to inspire and empower women to love ourselves wholeheartedly, regardless of imperfections, because perfect is an effing myth. Hallelujah to that. So for people who want to learn much more about this, and take a look at this, like, you got to love the middle finger here. This is great. You know, take a look, and I know that in the show notes, I've posted your Instagram page, and I've also posted, let me just go back here, your website, and also your opt-in is in the comments section. So if you wanted so Jen, why don't you tell us a little bit about this pledge and this PDF file that can come with that, because that looked really cool.
So the challenge has an opt-in as well. So if you join the challenge, you will get what we call the Perfect Circle, which is a tool that we use to help analyze where perfectionism is showing up most in your life. And you can sort of fill out the circle before the challenge and then revisit it after and kind of see if anything has shifted. So you will get that little PDF with the challenge. And then if you take the pledge, which is basically a pledge to love yourself, to love your body, to embrace your imperfections, then you'll get our Middle Finger to Perfection menu, which is our sort of little middle finger Bible of the different ways that little actions, little doable daily actions that you can take to sort of subvert perfection, give it the middle finger in your everyday life. Like, let me try to think of one. Like taking a lunch break. And actually taking time for yourself away from your desk as a gift to yourself. You deserve a real freaking lunch break. You know? And so many of us don't take one.
Yes. I was just talking about this with a client yesterday. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, things like leaving a couple dishes in the sink. The world will not end. If you're the type of person that has to have their house perfect, leave those dishes in the sink overnight. It's going to be okay. Like, just little ways to subvert the need to be perfect. So if you take the pledge, you'll get that. I think it's maybe like a 10-page booklet that has sort of morning, noon, and night things that you can do. Some are bigger steps and some are smaller steps, but people have said that they found it helpful.
Oh, it sounds amazing. And that's like giving people permission. I think that is such an important thing. It's like, yeah, we know we're supposed to do it. But like, what I like about your PDF is like, okay, not only are we saying to do this, but I'm actually giving you permission to do it. And we're going to do this together. And like, we're all going to be imperfect, you know? Like, and I love this idea of subverting it and kind of going against the grain of what you would automatically, your instincts would be to do. Can't skip lunch. I mean, can't go away from my desk. Can't leave. I got to have the great work ethic. I got to be, climbing the ladder and all this stuff. I'm actually working with a client now that I'm trying to work on that kind of thing, the work-life balance. And it's really difficult. It definitely is something I think that is so deeply ingrained that it's very, very hard to separate ourselves from that. And it goes very hand in hand with the self-love piece that you talked about earlier, how like it's a gift, to actually step away from your desk and to get a balanced, filling, satiating lunch is such a gift to you. And it really, like if you boil it down, it's not, the consequences are minute compared to the benefits that you get from even just a half hour away to do something for yourself. But
and I think
go ahead.
I think those actions are powerful too, from the perspective of like I think about that woman that you're working, well, I assume it's a woman, but
Yeah.
your client that you're working with.
Yeah.
And I think like, wow, I have to imagine that she has a lot of her worth tied up in her work success, right? Like that's how she's proving her worth. That's how she's receiving messages about her worthiness. And for someone like that, like hand raised, that's me too. It's sometimes hard to say like, I deserve a lunch break. Let me give this gift to myself when I have my worth all tied up in my work. So I think the actions are important because even if the beliefs aren't there yet, we haven't yet changed them or shifted them, the mere action of doing self-loving things can actually change our beliefs.
And the brain chemistry.
It goes both ways. Because that becomes evidence, like how we talked about before. Like we see ourselves giving ourselves love, taking care of ourselves. And then that becomes evidence that like, oh, maybe I'm worthy of love because here I am doing things that are self-loving.
That's very powerful. And also, I'll just note, like, I bet when people start to do more of those things, even like in small incremental ways, that there's a level of relaxation response that kicks in. Like there's a calming of the nervous system, right? Which gives us those feel-good hormones and the less of the cortisol and the stress. And that's going to be an incentive to like, oh, I actually feel really good doing this. Maybe I'll do a little bit more and a little bit more. And so that, it seems like it's going to be very piecemeal. It's not something that you're going to go from 0 to 60 at, that you really need to do. I love this, like one little thing at a time, and giving yourself permission to do that. And also let it, as we're sort of like shepherds on this, in this journey and in this process, helping people to be accountable to that through a community, right, of people that are sort of with you on that. So bravo for what you're doing. I love it.
Thank you so much.
Job. And is there anything before we finish up that you want to sort of say to the audience, or to any final thoughts you'd like to impart?
Oh, God.
Give me some words of wisdom.
Yes. I mean, I have words of wisdom and love, and then I have one other thing I want to share.
Yeah.
I just want to say to anyone who is watching this or seeing this or hearing it, you're already worthy. Not because you showed up to our live stream, although I love you for that too, but you're already worthy of love and of everything.
That's so great.
So please know that.
People need to hear that, and I think that's such a fabulous way to end. It's like sort of how we began the live stream and how we're ending the live stream, that you are not broken. There's nothing to fix here. You are worthy. And, Jenna, I'm in awe of you. I think what you're doing is so fantastic. I can't wait for people to watch this if they haven't watched it live. And be sure to look at the show notes where I've listed Jenna's website, also the F Perfect site, and then the link where you can take the pledge and get this amazing PDF file that goes with the pledge. So thank you so much, Jenna, for joining us today.
Thank you. And this isn't the end of our connection.
Not at all. Are you kidding me? It's just the beginning.
We're going to be doing more good stuff. So
Absolutely.
I'm so thankful for this conversation. Thank you, Jenny. Thank you for having me.
Oh, my pleasure. All right, let's end with some funky music, or poppy music?
Yes.
Let's jam out a little bit, and then we'll say goodbye.
Okay. Oh, now I hear it.
This is my favorite one. Woo!
Yeah, this is like kind of, there's a 70s kind of funk to it.
Yeah. Poppy funk. All right, this has been Food Mood Attitude, and join me next time. Thank you guys so much. We'll see you on the other side.